Hello and welcome to How to Be Together While You're Apart, making meaningful connections during COVID-19. My name is Farhan Lalji. I'm a sportscaster with TSN Television. I've also had the honor of being able to coach high school football for the last 30 years, where I've met a number of people. And as they move through various stages of their lives, they often come back and talk about tales of mental health and what they're dealing with and how so much of that has changed during COVID-19. Now, Move for Mental Health Month. This is COVID-19. This pandemic has taken a significant toll on the mental well-being of Canadian men and their families. If ever there was a time to start taking your mental health seriously and your physical health seriously, that time is now. Now, the Canadian Men's Health Foundation and our partner, Anxiety Canada, are committed to improving the resources available for men struggling with mental health. Move for Your Mental Health is a call for action for Canadian men and their families to move for mental health in June. And there's something for everyone. You can move for your mental health during a time of uncertainty. You can also learn something new about how to cope with stress, anxiety, and of course, loneliness. Inspire others with helpful tools and meaningful strategies. And of course, fundraise for mental health programming to help make more men's lives easier. Now, we'd like to thank our partner, Anxiety Canada, who, of course, has been a wonderful sponsor throughout all of this for making today's event possible. As the COVID-19 global pandemic moves into its 16th month, many of us continue to deal with heightened levels of stress and anxiety around our careers, our families, and, of course, our health. At the same time, many of us are feeling isolated while feeling these challenges. And as we do our part to protect the safety of our family and our communities, we've had to limit our connections to our friends and our extended families, to our sports teams and the various social gatherings that often help us to manage stress and social anxiety. And as we want to talk about how we can navigate all of this together, how we can make meaningful connections to feel together while being apart, and how we can use physical activity as a tool to manage the added stressors and anxiety. Today, we're joined by former CFL linebacker and mental health advocate, Shay Emery. Now, Shay will share a number of his own experiences. He is the founder and CEO of Wellman Project, a men's adventure club which aims to empower men and take initiative in their own mental wellness. We're also joined today by Dr. Maureen Whittle of Anxiety Canada. She is a scientific committee co-chair and a psychologist at the Vancouver CBT Center. Dr. Whittle will be sharing some expert advice, recommendations, and resources to help men and their families going through many of these same struggles. And a little bit of a secret for you, I actually had a chance to coach Shay 20 years ago when he was in the football field at Vancouver College. He was in grade 10 and 11 during that time. He was a pleasure to be around, so I look forward to reconnecting with him and also getting to learn more from Dr. Whittle. Shay, we'll start with you. As a business owner, a father, of course, and a mental health advocate, what can you tell us about some of the stressors and anxieties that COVID-19 has caused in your day-to-day life?
Well, selfishly enough, I want to say thank you because I'm also excited about talking to my former coach about all this stuff. But with regards to your question, I'm in the community gathering business. I have a recreation company where we service the corporate tourism businesses, and everything shut down overnight. And obviously do a little bit of public speaking as well, shut down overnight. So from a business standpoint, it's completely uplifted my entire life and really forced me, my business partners, people that I work with to really just be able to pivot. And that's consistently happened over and over and over again with the different times of restrictions and lockdowns and what have you. But all in all, it's just been really difficult on myself as a business owner, having to, continuously pivot, continuously come up with new ideas. And it's really tested my creative juices. And in all frankness, has been probably the most difficult year of my life personally, solely just because I've had to, personally just really deal with a lot of things on my shoulders, from business to work to friends and family and finances. It's really been difficult.
Yeah, and I know that at the beginning of this month, you also suffered COVID-19. Walk us through that and how that affected you, not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah. Another one of those moments where I was really trying to have gratitude for what I've been able to get through. And then they came out with the latest restrictions, and I tested positive for COVID the next day. So I was dealing with restrictions and about 2.5 weeks of pretty intense COVID symptoms. where I was on my back and had every symptom in the book, and was quite frightening, to be completely frank, with the I guess the strain that I'd contracted. And yeah, I mean, it was real. It made it very, very real. And it was not only real within my business life and affecting my ability to socialize, which obviously, as social beings, it was very important to me, but truly just having to actually deal with it, and potentially having to go to the hospital, or having 2.5 weeks of symptoms. It was really one of those things where I was quite frightened, and I'm just glad that I was able to get through it, and my business partners, my family, friends have been really able to support me through that time, and continuing on into this month.
And knowing you the way I have, I mean, you are a social creature. You love interacting. You've always had that engaging personality, and not just during the time where you had COVID, but throughout these 16 months. How's the added isolation, just that inability to connect, not just affected your business, but affected you personally?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I live up here in Whistler, BC, lots of outdoor space. And I own and operate a business that has 2.5 outdoor acres of recreational property right in the heart of Whistler Village. So we've been open. We've been open with with restrictions, but I've been able to congregate from a distance with friends and with family, and to recreate. So that's been our saving grace for me, to be able to continually operate, but also to get outside and to socialize. Mind you, not with my friends from Vancouver, my friends from my cousins or anyone like that, people from the US or what have you. It's really just I've been able to socialize, and it's been a saving grace, as I mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you've got that outdoor space, but in terms of all that extended reach, what have you been doing? What strategies have you been using to stay connected?
I mean, Zoom. We're all used to it at this point. Whether it be birthdays past or anniversaries. This year, my parents had their 50th wedding. My sister turned 40. My dad turned 70. We had all these fairly large celebrations, and they were all done over Zoom. And also, I've had my bubble of people here in my community, whether it be friends of family, what have you. I've really been able to kind of connect with those people, and I just pick up the phone. I'm on the highway a lot, so picking up the phone and just trying to connect with old teammates or friends and family is just continuously doing that, and biding our time to get to the point where we open the floodgates and we can open this community back up.
Dr. Whittle, I'll ask you to jump in here. And, Shay talks about some positive mechanisms that he's used to try to stay connected and cope with all of this. But what about some of the problematic mechanisms that people might be using to cope with COVID-19 and all that it's brought?
Yeah. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to join this. And Shay, thank you for telling your story, because it's really important. Mm-hmm. And it brings a human face to it. And mental health is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, what gender you are, how much wealth you have. Mental health is the great equalizer. So thank you for showing that side. So Farhan, in answer to your question, I think we're seeing a variety of things. And I think it was different in the beginning of the pandemic. And I think as it's groaning on, we're starting to see, and the fatigue is really setting in. I think we're starting to see things that are maybe not as helpful. In the beginning, when it was a bit of a novelty, and Zoom was a novelty, that for some people it didn't seem so bad. But I think as we're going on and it's getting more and more, that Zoom's getting a little tiresome. And it's certainly better than not having it, for sure. But as we are, more and more being told to stay away from our loved ones, but pre-pandemic, you showed your love by getting together. Now we show our love by staying apart. And it's so different than anything that we've ever done. And I think we also need to be more intentional about doing the things and coping in healthy ways. And it's just harder to do. If gyms are closed, or you don't have the orthopedics to run outside, if you live in a cold part of the country, it's much harder to get together and recreate or be at a physically distanced. And I think that makes it more difficult to engage these coping strategies, whether it be exercise or talking with our bubble or our wider bubble. And I think that's really starting to wear on folks.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I know for me, I've heard stories where there's always the extremes. Some people, their lives have been accentuated on some levels because of all of this. And I'll be honest, I think for me it has, because it's forced me closer to my family just based on what I do for work and the amount of travel I do and the routine you get in. Sometimes it's difficult to really appreciate because you're constantly go, and you don't see your family as much as you'd like. And to be truthful, I've never been necessarily mental health conscious or mental health aware until the last year and a half. Mm-hmm. And I say that, and Shay, you'll appreciate this, because when you coach the sport that I coach, and when you coach competitive sport to begin with, I think we are wired to try to teach coping skills and try to teach resiliency before we get into an acknowledgement of mental health. And Shay, you grew up in our world of football, and I had a chance to work with you when you were a young person. And I think for me, for the last 20 years, I've been taking my physical health seriously. I just kind of go with what I'm doing work-wise, and I wind up getting on the road. And when I go on the road, I actually train more or work out more than I normally do, because when I'm home, I've got home life to deal with, and there just doesn't seem to be time. So last February, before the pandemic really hit, I was at the Super Bowl, and during that week in Miami, I ran and worked out every day. And I've done that before, but this time I got home and I continued. And the pandemic hit and I continued. And now I've been running 5 days a week since the pandemic hit. And I didn't know my mental health needed improving. And clearly I've found through all of that I feel so much better about myself, because my physical health has contributed to a different level of mental health being that I didn't know was a problem before. And so I think it made me a lot more aware, and it's now put me in a situation. And I don't know if COVID had not happened, if I would have done like I normally do, where I train for a couple of weeks and then I don't stay involved, and then I kind of go back to the regular life. I think it's helped me on a lot of levels to get healthier. I've lost weight. I feel better about myself. But like I said, that mental health piece, because of the physical engagement, I've become more aware of it. I feel better about so many things. So physically for you, Shay, what have you done, just to kind of, to have those anxiety, to have those stressors, be able to get alleviated?
It gives me goosebumps hearing that story, to be honest with you. I've been up and down and all around, as you well know. I went to university in the States and had to come back due to depression. And it was a physical activity thing, and it was a lack of physical activity thing where since retirement at this point, I've gone through these waves of getting super fit and then kind of self-sabotaging, like, oh, I'm chilling now, and then going back up and really, as of late, I kind of hit another rock bottom, and I wasn't working out, and owning a restaurant, and always trying to socialize and keep the business afloat, and I was having a couple too many beers and burgers, and then I kind of hurt my elbow, so I wasn't working out as much, and it was the middle of winter, so I was really only going snowboarding once a week. I just was out of my routine. And for me, the mechanism that I truly need, and we've all heard it over and over and over again, is really your routine, right? Is there structure to go with your mindset towards your physical health? Because that point that you made around physical health and mental health, that connection, they're interrelated. And the spiritual and the emotional and the relationship, it's all just one sphere of health. And my personal perspective is that the foundations for me starts with lifting heavy things, because that's what I've done so much, but also trying to do new things and to step outside your comfort zone and try new activities. And that's why, you know, I love the business that I'm in, because I'm trying axe throwing, and I start snowball fights and tennis and pickleball and ping pong and dart, and just like trying new things to get me outside, to socialize, to congregate, to really, you know, push myself in a physical and a mental and emotional fashion.
Dr. Whittle, what are some of the, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I can just also add in a little bit about, Shay mentioned routine, and routine is so anchoring for us. And COVID turned that upside down for everybody.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've been saying to people is build a new routine. It may not be the same routine that you had before COVID, but build something, because it's going to be grounding for you. And if I can just talk just a little bit about my experience, I'm a morning exerciser. I'm pretty diligent about it. I know that exercise is good for my mental health. So I'm pretty militant about it. So I would go to the gym before I'd go to work, most weekday mornings. Well, I wasn't feeling comfortable going to a gym. I can't run anymore. My knees have given me untold trouble. And so I started walking in the morning. It is not the cardio hit that I like, but it is better than staying in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, I have to say that to myself every time. You know what? This isn't, you know, so I try not to be really black and white about it. This isn't as good as I would like, but it's better than not doing it at all. And it is still that anchor for me in the morning. So I'm still getting up at the same time that I would get up pre-pandemic. And it helps me to normalize what has gone on. So I think that's I think my experience is probably fairly typical. So having that routine and will help normalize and ground people. And I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, for me, I almost felt guilty previously. You know, you'd always want to start, and you'd always want to move, and you'd always want to change your health, and then you don't do it. And there was always that guilt piece. And I think just having alleviated that has helped me as much as anything, to just kind of know I'm at least trying, I'm at least making that effort. And it took long enough for me to get there, but just losing that piece, it's almost been addition by subtraction. What are some of the other recommendations, Dr. Whittle, that you'd make to people that maybe potentially using some of the negative, you know, stress relievers or coping mechanisms? You know, what else do you think is something people need to consider?
Well, I think that, you know, some of those negative things that you talked about, people might be drinking a little too much, might be sitting on the sofa watching Netflix a little too much, and being really insular, you know, in part because, you know, it can be a tricky balance, balancing mental health and public health. And we, as I was saying earlier, we need to be more intentional about creating that balance, because we can go out. We haven't been locked down like other places in the world. You know, for example, I think in the UK, in parts of the pandemic, they were allowed out an hour a day. And I think in most places and regions in Canada, it's been a little bit better than that. So we can go out, and because we can, we should. You know, if it's minus 30, then, you know, maybe not for long. Or if it's bucketing down rain, put your Gore-Tex on and out the door. Because it's just, and meet a friend, or even if you see somebody else out as you're walking, make eye contact, say hello, because everybody is going through a hard time. And it is, Farhan, you talked about it being a good things, because you were able to hit a little pause on your life. I think your story, fantastic. I don't think it's the typical story. It's been fantastic that it's been your story. But I think just being able to connect with humans, if you're in the grocery store, it's probably not easy standing on the other side of that plexiglass 8 hours a day, talking to people, wondering if you're going to get COVID. And maybe just a little bit of a little extra, hey, how are you today? And that little bit of connection, I think, is going to be helpful for both people. And making eye contact. We, in our society, we tend not to look at each other in the eye anymore. And
always looking down.
Always looking down or looking round or something. And because I think it helps us to build that connection. So look for those little moments to connect with people.
Yeah, one of the things I'm learning about of late is mindfulness, and part of it is because my son is getting involved, in higher level athletics, and he struggles with moving on from a mistake. So he's been doing some work with some professionals that we've kind of directed him to, and one of the things I've learned a lot about is mindfulness and mind and body in the same place at the same time. And I think that's kind of one of the things, because of all of the physical and unseen barriers that COVID-19 has brought to us, that it's so easy to physically be in one place and mentally be in another, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something, you talk about that just having that plexiglass barrier between yourself and somebody at the grocery store. I mean, I find myself, because I can't hear them properly, like leaning around to the other side just so I can hear how much money I've got to pay, or if my coupons or my air miles are ready to go through. But yeah, it's an interesting point, is all of those intentional and unintentional barriers that affect us mentally.
Yes, for sure. Yesterday I was out shopping and of course you have to speak so much louder because you have to speak through the mask. And I tend to be a soft talker, and the poor woman on the other side of the counter couldn't hear me. And I think I said it 3 times, and then I finally shouted it. And then I said, oh, I'm so sorry I shouted. I didn't mean to shout at you.
Shay, I want to take you back a bit, because you mentioned that, you went through some depression when you were at university. You were at Eastern Washington, and then eventually came back to UBC. On the topic of mental health, what was the stigma like then to even discuss what you were dealing with versus what we're going through now collectively as a society during COVID, where you're encouraged to talk about it because we know everybody's dealing with it?
We're in a completely different universe, especially being within a locker room, in a high performance environment. And that being, how many years ago? 15, 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Long time, right? There's been a lot of organizations that have put so much time and energy into, exposing the conversation around mental health, and, being a part of that conversation and being able to catalyze this movement. And now, like you mentioned, with COVID really, empowering people to communicate in that regard, it's night and day. And I get goosebumps thinking about all the conversations that have come towards me, men and women that have reached out to have conversations with me and share their stories with me, solely because I've been, vulnerable enough to share my story and to be open and to be a safer space to share their experience. And obviously, with increased mental health pressures, for me personally, I've been dealing with depression since that point in time. Was the first time I kind of came to realize that there was something that I needed to shift, and I've swept it under the rug and approached it, and it's really as of late has been something that I've really needed to focus on. I've had 25, 30 concussions in my life, and I don't have any symptoms from a physical standpoint, zero pain, but for me, it's all emotional, it's mental, it pops up if I'm not taking care, if I'm not doing my routine, if I'm not feeling empowered and taking my physical health seriously. And I'm just so excited, because when I do go into those darker places, I know without a doubt there is a community of friends and family around me that know that I go through these bouts with depression, as well as the services that are available to me, unending here in Canada. We're so lucky and so grateful to have all the offerings and services from a mental health standpoint. So it's just, like I said, night and day.
You mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, you had a significant breakdown that basically forced you to shut down for a period of time. Right. Tell me about that. And when that's coming, do you know it's coming?
I'm in it. I know I'm in it. And I think, the whole purpose of this Zoom here is for us to inspire, and for us to inspire people to move, to make a shift. And I know, I had been journaling in the morning. It's like, make the decision, right? Make the decision to do your routine. And I was just continuously procrastinating or being fearful of the hard work. And, I'm now going on 2 months of having made that decision and doing the hard work. And it's simple, it's routine, it's physical movement, it's socializing with my friends in a way that's approachable at this point in time. And, diet, and, like you said earlier, mindfulness, and these simple tools that we're so aware of these points in our lives. And I just wasn't making that decision. And, what I'm trying to empower other people to do is just make the decision. It's very simple. It's black and white. It's like, well, you're not sleeping as much as you need to. You're not eating the foods you need to eat. You're not drinking as much water. You're not moving at all. And you're not socializing, and you're in a dark place. Well, make the decision to do everything opposite of that, and see how it makes you feel. It's like the movement piece. Like, oh, I like to work out because it makes me feel amazing. Well, let's work out more, and let's see where we go. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and is, like I said, extremely difficult, but was able to rely on my family, was able to rely on my friends, and definitely was able to reach out to some services and ask for help.
Dr. Whittle, obviously Shay has been in a position for the last, 15 to 18 years where he's been aware of his situation. What advice do you give to people who aren't as they're going through this?
Yeah. That's a good question. And I think your experience was an interesting one as I was listening to it, as you were talking about how when you were doing it regularly, exercise and moving, you felt better. You saw that connection between physical health and mental health. And in that kind of, not that you would have said you had struggles with mental health before, but it sounded like it was just a little bit of fine tuning. So if it wasn't interfering with your life, it sounds like you put more icing on the cake by being able, pardon the pun, by being able to exercise and move and eat better and not be so busy and see and connect more with family in your bubble. Recognize that, and I think one of the things that will come from this pandemic is that we're going to talk about mental health more, because so many people will have been suffering and struggling and plodding along, that there's not going to, I'm hoping that we'll be able to shed some of the stigma around it, because it's just going to be so much more prevalent, and because it's been a big hit for all of us. And so the recognition that you're not weak because you're dealing with this. This has nothing to do with willpower, that you struggle with mental health, or that mental health is part of health. And it's not like if we have appendicitis or we get cancer, that we say we're weak. There needs to be some parity with mental health and physical health. And the recognition that, hey, you know what? It doesn't have to be like this. I can make choices to do things differently. And in things like what Shay was talking about, making choices to do it differently. Depression, anxiety, those are manageable things. There's no quote unquote cure, but it's manageable. And if you need the extra supports of empirically supported psychological treatments like cognitive behavior therapy, it's available. Whether it's in the public health system, if you're so fortunate to have the finances in the private system, there's also fantastic resources online to help people. If you need medications to augment that, those too are available to us in Canada. So there are ways to do it differently, and life doesn't have to be lived in kind of you can bring it back from black and white to living in color again, is the way that I think about it. It's doable.
It's great to know that that's out there. And, it's interesting in the work that I do, you take for granted people's mental health. So the NHL teams that we wind up covering right now, the restrictions around all professional athletes, where they basically are either in a bubble or they're in a mini bubble. And if they're on the road, they can't be in, they can't spend time with their teammates. It's basically go to the rink, go to the hotel room, go back to the rink, go to the hotel room, go home, come back to practice. And we take it for granted because they make millions. And you forget that whether they make millions or not, they're still human beings going through all of these, right? And it's a challenge for everybody, regardless of the economic spectrum you're in or any of that. And, I just can't wait to get out of this now that I've got my first vaccine shot and it feels like we're nearing the end. But I think the conversations still need to continue. And Shay, one of the things you've done that's just fabulous is the Wellman Project. Tell us about it and just what are some of the resources that you're doing to help people struggle with anxiety and mental health?
Yeah. So, Wellman was originally started as a platform for men to connect with their human experience. And, really what it's morphed into, especially at this point in time, is solely an expose for people to understand that men are having these conversations. And I'm one of those men. And obviously, that's a reason why I connected with Canadian Men's Health Foundation. I've been super grateful to be a national champion probably for about 7-8 years now, to further the conversation, further my message, to connect with more men. And, really the one thing that I always like to share is that, Wellman is that platform. But also there are so many men's groups and retreats and, masterminds, and it's so much more approachable now than it was even 5 years ago. I mean, right now I think there's like 3 or 4 guys that I'm trying to connect with, or that are trying to connect with me because I've been open about my story, to have me join the men's group. So I could be there for accountability and for structure and just to connect. And, I think that's high level right now, is again, inspiring this movement of, you don't need to go to a therapist or go to CBT or what have you. It's simply just taking that first step and being like, I kind of just need to get out of my shell a little bit. And this group seems like it's a run club or whatever. Just join something that makes you that one dial go one tick. And that's really what Wellman has become for me, is enabling and hoping to empower other men to have those conversations so they can, make those shifts in their lives.
Well, I had Shay come and speak to my football team at New Westminster Secondary at one point. We were really looking forward to throwing the axes. We didn't get a chance to do that. So that was disappointing, but the yoga, yeah, I know, but the yoga and the other exercises and everything else that you put our young men through, it was really appreciated. And I know that you're doing great work. And I'm proud of you, as somebody who knew you when you were in the 10th and 11th grade for the first time, to see where you're at today, just as a father. And I want to thank you, Shay, for telling your story. Also, Dr. Maureen Whittle, thank you so much for being with us today. Just tremendous insight. And thank you for all the resource information you were able to give it to us. And I'm sure many people viewing this will get a chance to reach out to you, and we'll be the better for it. Also want to thanks again to our sponsors, and a special shout out to our friends at Anxiety Canada for all of their contributions. A reminder to visit menshealthfoundation.ca for more resources and to learn more about Men's Health Month activities. And if you liked what you saw today, what you heard, please comment, like, or share this video. And finally, as national charities, the Canadian Men's Health Foundation and Anxiety Canada, of course, rely on donations to create relatable and engaging resources for Canadians. Every dollar raised from this event will fund mental health programming and services online to support Canadian men and their families. And we've included a donation link in the description of this post. So once again, Dr. Whittle, Shay, thanks so much for doing this. And thanks to all of you for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.